In this video, I'm going to show you how you can complete this week's assignment. And so what we're going to do is we're going to load up a file called Christmas Sales, and it's a CSV file. And so we'll go ahead and repeat what we've already learned how to load CSV files. And once we do that, we can go ahead and run some basic functions. And I'm going to show you how you can isolate a single variable and run some functions on that single variable. So first things first, let's go ahead and get our file. So we're going to go ahead and copy, let's call it Christmas. We'll call it Christmas Sales. .sales. Actually, you know what? Let's make that cheap. Let's make that shorter. We'll call it just sales. Just because later on when we actually have to work with the data, we don't want to have to type Christmas.sales all the time. So we are going to set that equal to the results of read ad.csv, and I'm going to look for a file in my directory. We're going to try that file choose thing again. And it's going to allow me to go in here to my folder, my Explorer folder, and I'm going to do christmassales.csv. There it is right there. Okay, and I can select that and open it, and it has loaded my file. Next thing I can do is I can verify that it's looking like I want it to look, so I can use the view command. Remember, the view command is one of the only, if not the only one that we'll ever use, the only function that has a capital letter. Capital V, IEW, and we're going to look at sales. And it looks like there are customer number, visits, Christmas sales. So we're going to run some simple functions on that particular file. And let's take a look at what some of those are. We'll go ahead and close this out. One of the things we might want to do is, without having to look at the entire file using the view command, we could use head. And head will show us the first 6 rows of the file. Boom. That looks fine. Enough for you to be able to sort of verify the formats, and then you can see that everything loaded correctly. You can also use a function called tail. It'll show you the last 6 rows, and you'll get to see how many rows you actually have. So we have 50 rows in our file, and those look formatted correctly as well. There's another function called dimension, or DIM, and it just tells us how many rows and columns we have. We have 3 columns of data, and we have 50 rows of 50 rows of records. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is something a little bit more advanced. It's going to be calculating some statistical functions. And these are pretty simple, right? We're calling this lesson the measures of central tendency. And so we're going to look at 3. And the 3 we're going to look at are going to be mean or average. We're also going to look at median. And then we're going to look at standard deviation. And as you might expect, R has a function for each one of these. The first one is mean. Mean. And we're going to go ahead and say calculate the mean and tell us what it is. But wait a minute. How do we separate out a specific variable in order for us to focus just on that variable? Well, there's a way to do that. Okay, the name of our file, or our data frame actually, is called sales. So sales, we have to specify sales, and then we tell it, using the $, which of the columns we're actually going to use. So let's take visits. Okay, calculate mean of sales.visits. And what that's going to do is just take that second column and give me a mean value for that second column. And it tells me 12.7. All right, well, 12.7, if we look at the whole data set, I guess that looks pretty good. But remember, mean can be influenced heavily by the any outliers. And so we might want to take a look at median also. It's the same thing, although we're instead of using mean, we're going to use median. But the format is essentially the same. We specify the data frame first, specify the field that we want, and it tells us that the median is 12. All right, the last thing we want to do, that's a mean and median that are fairly close, which means there's probably going to be a pretty small standard deviation. But to calculate standard deviation, we just use the SD function. And we specify the same way of identifying our data frame first and then our column. $VISITS. Standard deviation is 6.95. It's not as small as I thought it was. So there must be some outliers in there somewhere that are not really having much of an impact on the mean. So you see how we can identify, first of all, the particular data frame that we want to use, which is the data frame that we loaded, our Christmas sales data frame. And we can go ahead and identify some information about it using the head, the tail, and the dimension function. And we can also view the file using the view function. But we can also calculate the mean, the median, and the standard deviation by identifying first the data frame and then separating it with a $sign and then the specific field that we want to look at. And that's how we can identify specific items in a particular file that we want to look at. Okay, your assignment is going to be very similar to this. I've given you a file that has two columns, one of them sales and one of them is Christmas sales. You should have no problem after looking at this video identifying what you need to do in order to calculate the values that I want you to turn in as your assignment.